All right, we are back with another collector showcase. I'm very excited about this one, probably because we're featuring my favorite football player, which is Peyton Manning, and I've got Drake here to share his collection. And I know Drake has had a heck of a run over the last maybe forever. You've been doing this for quite some time, but it feels like over the last several months, you've really added some key pieces to your collection. And I know adding key pieces to your collection also, a result of that is maybe having to let go of some pieces too. So maybe we'll talk about that. But are you excited to share your collection today?
Absolutely, Brett. I'm always excited to show off the cards. It's all about the cards. I love to talk about the stories behind the acquisitions, things, as you mentioned, things to let go, and that sort of thing. But you're certainly correct about this last run a little bit. Is I've kind of been on a heater, so to speak, and it's interesting how things have evolved. I think it all kind of got kick-started when I got the Peyton Manning 2012 Prizm Gold way back when in 2021. Which I think a lot of people remember. And I know we talked about on the show. And then I had that phase in the middle where I was going on the crossover every week asking like why nobody would sell me Manning cards at a reasonable price and then that whole sort of thing. And then now I've come full circle to finally being able to acquire these cards that I've chased after. It's a fortunate thing, but it's also an unfortunate thing because it's like so many things are becoming available like right at once. It can be kind of difficult to try to make, kind of walk through the acquisition in your mind and what you may have to let go. And if that's something you want to do.
So one of the traits I would describe you by in terms of you as a collector would be persistent. You've always been really good at finding what you're looking for and what you've wanted, and maybe talk about just the fact that you have been persistent. But then I also think, based on some of the cards that you've picked up, a lot of it has been relationships that you've had alongside people viewing you as a premium Manning collector, so they come to you. So it's, while we want these cards to just end up in our collection kind of overnight, that's not necessarily the reality. So maybe just as your collection has evolved, before we get into the cards, maybe talk about all of those factors that have led you to some of these incredible cards that you own today.
Yeah, one of the first things that comes to mind, and I was talking about this with some folks at the National, is you're walking around and you're looking at all these great collector showcases, and there's some great cards. But I made the comment. I said the best cards at this show are walking around in people's backpacks, right? And I think that's why relationships are so important because sometimes you may find something through a dealer. We've got several friends who are dealers. It may be through like an auction house or something like that, but many times it's around the relationships that you have. And one of the things that I think that I've found that's worked really well is, you meet somebody new. It may be a transactional relationship at first, but then it turns into more of like a personal type relationship. And so your first, deal may be just simply a transaction, but then you get to talking to that person more and find out, hey, what else do you have? And you find out they have more Peyton Manning cards that you like. That's almost, 3 out of the last 4 acquisitions I've had that I've shared were from the same person. And when I initially met him, he just had one card that I knew about. And I'm like, wow, that's a great card. And then we got to talking more. And he's like, well, I've got this and I've got that, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, well, I don't have enough money right now, but if I did, I would buy everything. And so it's great to see that piece. And it's also great to, like, one of the things that credit to you talk about is share your cards, share who you're collecting, share the types of cards that you're after, and things like that, because there's people that have reached out to me that say, hey, I have this card, or I know someone who has this card. Would you be interested in this card? And that sort of thing. And then you get the card and you post the card. And I actually got a DM yesterday from someone saying, Drake, like, where are you finding all these cards? Because they're not showing up on eBay. They're not at an auction. They're not at a show. And so I don't really think there's any thing magical to it. I've shared before, I'm not a transactional guy. I love relationships. I love just talking to people about cards, and it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, and I think that's super important.
So before we get into the cards, one other question that I want to dig into, because I think it might be helpful for others. In a lot of cases with these collections, specifically player collections that we're building, they evolve over time and we acquire mini cards. But when bigger cards come up, like this is your only shot type of cards, we might not necessarily have the money in our bank account to go pay for those right away. Or maybe we do, but our better halves might be like, what are you doing? Like we need to pay the bills here. So it doesn't make logical sense for us to just like liquidate our bank accounts and, pick up a card. However, we have equity in our PC, we have equity in those player collections. And a lot of the times it takes taking some of those cards to help fund your next purchase. How have you, because I know when we first met, you're like me, where it's like you want as many cards as possible. It's comforting to be surrounded. It's fun to buy cards. It's easier to get rid of cards that maybe aren't part of your player collection. But how have you maybe gotten to the point where you're able to look at your Manning collection, take it to Judgment Day and be like, all right, these cards were great. They served a time and a place. I really appreciate them. But this card that's lingering out there, I want a lot more than these. So I'm going to get rid of these to help fund that. Like, how have you evolved in that perspective, and maybe just share some of that process that you've gone through?
Yeah, it's certainly been a true evolution. As people know, it's a lot easier to buy than it is to sell. And then as you said, whenever you're attached to something, it makes it a whole lot tougher. It's one of the things I'll share is the whole thing with PC Judgment Day is you kind of look at cards, and I think somebody asked this question on the crossover last week, and it's like when you're figuring out what cards to get rid of, is it better to get rid of something that like you had a lower cost basis and it's increased in value, or maybe you bought something high, it's gone down in value, and you're like, hey, I just want to be done with it. And so that, for me, I really don't look at it like that. I look at it more of, hey, what's the current value of the card today? I really don't care what I paid for it, but the card I want is valued at X, and I've got to come up to that amount. And so as I go through my collection, I look at, okay, is this something that if I were to let go of, would I be able to get back easily? And if the answer is no, then maybe it goes into a different pile, like probably not. And then if it's something I could get back easily. And I used to think like, wow, like a Topps Chrome Gold Refractor, that's a hard card to find, right? But then as you evolve more, it's like, well, there's 50 copies and that's not that many, but a few will pop up from time to time. But when you get into the lower numbered stuff, then you say like, that's a little bit tougher to find. And of course, in the 101s and the out of 10s and so on and so forth. And so you start to kind of get cards together to develop or to work towards that number that you're trying to get to. And then the other thing is kind of looking at, do you have similar cards in your collection, right? So like, for example, I recently, to help acquire the shield with the 2 patches that I got from Kevin at National, I had another shield and I was like, I like this card, but I don't know that I like it as much as the shield that I'm getting from him. And so as tough as it was to let a shield go, a 1-of-1 shield that's game worn and things like that, it made me happy knowing that I was upgrading the type of card that it was, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It does. Let's get into the cards, and I'll ask to maybe, because I feel like for my observation watching you build your collection, likely the most significant Manning purchase you've ever made, which I feel like you making the purchase maybe helps set the stage for the way the rest of your collection resides. So maybe I'll ask you, maybe we start there with your recent biggest pickup, and then we can kind of just stroll down every lane that you have laid out.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting thing. Before we share the card, I actually went to dinner with some friends the night before I left for national, and my friend's wife, we were talking cards, and she said, "Drake, what's the most valuable card in your collection right now?" And at the time, I told her, I said, "Oh, I think I've got something that's worth like about $50,000 or something." And she's like, "Wow, that's crazy!" And then like 3 days later, I'm going and doubling that and then some to get this, the 98, if I can get it right, the 98 Credentials Future. Here we go. Is that good? Something like that. Okay. Yes, this is a PSA 9, number 3 out of 7. Obviously, this was a card I had been chasing for a long, long time. Again, there we go. Got it now. Just love it's kind of the see-through card, the acetate. I wish he wasn't in a practice jersey, but I do like that he's in the Colts uniform and that whole sort of thing. And just the fact that there's only 7 copies and these are just super, super tough to find. It's just, I've talked about the card. I've talked about the acquisition story, but it's just an amazing card and one that I feel, I don't know that I can ever top it in my Manning collection.
So let's talk about going into the national. I know we had talked and you had a bunch of deals and things lined up. That was not mentioned as a part of it. Was that you just knew it and you were like, you didn't want to talk about it too much because you wanted to make sure it was done? Or did it really all unfold and take shape when you were at the national?
Yeah, so it all unfolded and took shape at national. So John Burleson, Spur Fan at Tech, is who I got that from. And like him, like Spinatron, who were the two that I knew that had some copies, I would talk to them about once a month and say, "Hey, is it available? Let me know, this, that, and the other." And I woke up on Thursday morning of the national week, and I had 4 different DMs from people that were sharing John's story saying headed to the national. And he had a bunch of cards laid out in a pile. And that future was in there. And I'm like, oh, wow. And so I wondered why he was bringing it with him, because I had asked him on that Monday, "Hey, any chance you'll bring the future?" And he said, "No, that one's staying at home." And so he tells me that, yes, I've got it with me. I'm bringing it to get it reholdered. And I said, "Well, is there any chance it would be available?" And he said, "Possibly." And I guess a piece of advice is, like, anytime someone tells you something like possibly or maybe or I'm thinking about it, like, the answer is yes, right? And so at that point, I was like a rabbit in heat just after him on that card and trying to figure out. And I was talking to my friend who was traveling with me and trying to figure out like how to make this happen, because I later understood what his number was. And I'd actually found out about it from a few different people who were at the show who had talked to him, because evidently he did decide to make it available. He came up with a number, and, of course, that's a card that anytime one comes available, because it doesn't come available very often, people, whether they're Manning collectors or 90s collectors or just high-end collectors, they're after a card like that. And so I knew I had to act quickly, but I didn't know what acting quickly looked like, because, again, as you mentioned, I don't have that amount of money just sitting in my account. But I had known that our friend Nick, the Wharf, had recently started his card funding. And I knew kind of what it looked like, but not exactly. And so I reached out to Nick and I said, "Hey, here's the future. I want this card." Of course, I've made it well known that I want that card. It was no secret. And so I talked to Nick and, explained how, and Nick knows my collection and he knows the equity that I have in my collection. And so he knew that I would have the funding to support it, but I wanted to understand what that whole process looked like. Right. So then I made the deal with John through Nick. Nick sent him the money. I sent off a ton of cards to Nick that are still being auctioned right now. Of course, it took a huge chunk of my collection. And of course, it was tough to come home, as you mentioned, to Judgment Day and kind of think about what was going to happen and the way that was going to happen and that sort of thing. But just knowing I had the one card that I wanted, it made the Judgment Day process a lot easier to kind of go through with that whole process and everything. So Nick certainly made it as seamless as possible. It was agonizing. I'll say waiting on the card to get reholdered. I do love that it's in the new holder, but then as some people walk around with $1 million cards in their pocket and things like that, I was sweating bullets as soon as I picked it up that Friday night, because I had my, zipper shorts on and I'm walking around and, I'm not telling anybody about it just because I'm super nervous about the whole thing. So, but it was awesome to be able to get it in person and to be able to finally get that card and have the different funding options that, weren't available. Like 6 months ago even. So.
We should have called and hired a security guard for you to be walking around, and people are like, why does Drake have a security guard? Before we get off that card, I think maybe because it was such a significant purchase and you've gone through so much to make it happen, maybe what is one lesson that you have learned when you enter that territory of card that you might not have realized until you've gone through the process?
Yeah, I think the one lesson learned is you have to be ready to act, and you've got to be able to act quickly. And I'll say that just going back to the relationship thing is it's all about the relationships, right? Because if I hadn't maintained that relationship with John, if he had just told me no, like this card is never available, this, that, and the other, and then I just walked away and said, well, shucks, I'm never going to get that card, right? Then he wouldn't have had that relationship with me so that whenever he did make it available, that I was kind of the first ones that he thought of, because that was one thing is he told me that he wanted me to have that card. There were other people that were telling me that like they wanted me to have that card. And so it was like your own like personal cheering section, if that makes sense. And so, it's not really, I'll say like a new lesson, but I think the biggest lesson in this all is just, is maintain those relationships. Always stay and, just keep in contact with folks because even if the answer is no, I think there's very few people that have true coffin cards that they're going to throw in their coffin with them. At some point, cards will become available for one reason or the next. And so that's probably my biggest piece of advice is just to stay in contact with people and stay after the cards that you really want and make it known that those are the cards that you really want.
So you want to stay on the rookie train? Where do we want to go?
Yeah.
This is this is like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Drake.
Yeah, we can do that. Manning. That's right. Well, I've got the Credentials Future from '98. I actually had the Now, but I did let that go to our good friend Mortal Kombat Paul because I know that was one thing that he wanted to do as part of the deal, and I'll share a card that I picked up. But I did want to also show this isn't so much like a rookie, but this is kind of continuing the run of the Credentials. Here. So here's the Now and the Future from 1999, both in a BGS 9. I actually prefer this one, even though it's higher number. It's out of 60. This one's kind of cool. It's a jersey number, 18 out of 60. But I think the kind of that grayish color looks better with the Colts uniform versus the golden color, if that makes sense. I mean, they're both. How
important is the aesthetics to you when you're making those types of purchases on significant Manning cards?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you think about there's certain cards where you get them in or you see them and you get them in and you're just like, that's kind of underwhelming, right? You want to get a card and you just want to pull it out and be like, wow, that's amazing, And then to finish it up, this is the Essential Credentials Now, which kind of has more of a aluminum type thing. It's not really like a see-through type card. So this is a PSA 9. This is the highest graded copy there. As you and I have talked about before, I've been on this warpath on getting the highest graded copies and, that whole sort of thing. So
a little bit of a grade snob over here. It's okay though.
There's the 24 karat. This is one that's always popular. I mean, the shine.
So I want your remarks on the fact that this parallel has become aesthetically, it's unbelievable. The shine is just outstanding. This is a key card for any Manning collector. Mm-hmm. The thing I always go back to that's so fascinating about this parallel is that it's a part of Flair Brilliance, which was a one and done set. This is there's the of 99 golds. This is the 24 karat, which has the more shiny finish and obviously limited to 24. I think we talk about so much that the product matters so much when we were making these big purchases in present day, but I don't think anybody could have realized that this product was, had basketball, had baseball, had football. It was only one and done, would have had this type of significance. years, decades later. What is it about, I guess, the Flair Brilliance and the 24 karat gold? Why do you think it's had such staying power and continues to maybe elevate its position in the hobby over such a long period of time?
Yeah, I certainly think like we'll just talk football, the checklist matters. You've got some big rookies in Peyton and Randy Moss. They're in their pro uniforms. A lot of their other bigger cards, they're in a college uniform. And so I think that kind of factors into it. Obviously, he's in a game uniform. Certainly, there's a fascination and a fixation on gold in the hobby. And so I think when you can get a shiny card that also has gold flakes built into it, that's phenomenal. There's only 24 copies, so it's pretty rare. It's one of those cards that I think scarcity helps too. You can't just hop onto eBay and find a Peyton 24 karat gold. And so I think you just combine all that with combine with the blinding shine of the card. I mean, it's one of my favorite looking cards, and I'll also say it's one that people, Manning collectors and non-Manning collectors, I get asked about that card more than any other card in my collection. People saying, "Hey, is it for sale? Can I buy it?" I mean, they really, really want that card. And so fortunately I was able to get it before things went nuts with the 24 karat, but it's still one of my favorite cards in my collection.
24 copies in a card that came out in 98 is equivalent to how many copies in like the ultra modern era? Like, how do you think about that? Because it's not like there aren't 24 copies available. Like those cards get locked away. But how do you think about like the higher print runs in the 90s, but just the feeling that it feels like feels a lot less accessible than some of the other stuff we see today?
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk about that sometimes. Like, I would equate it, like you said, to say like a 2015 gold vinyl Prizm out of 5. Like those things are hard to find. Now, some of the other years of gold vinyl, you see more because they're newer. So it's not really apples to apples comparison. But, you think of cards like that, and, I'll show the PMG in a minute. Those are out of 50. You think of the Rubies that are out of, in the 30s and so on and so forth. And you're like, wow, that's like a decent number of copies. I should be able to go find one of those. And you can't. Right. And so I think it just goes to show that certain cards are not just the flavor of the week, the flippable type card. It's the cards that people truly want in their collection. And once they get put in their collection, they just don't become available. Or if they do become available, they're at an astronomical price.
I think we're ready for the PMG, especially because it's pretty topical based on some recent sales history.
Yeah, it is. So this is obviously the 98 PMG. I love the wheels kind of spinning and that whole sort of thing. I joke with people too about how, this PSA 9 is actually more rare than the PSA 10 because it's a pop one. And I've shared as well too that, jersey doesn't matter. I'll collect them in a Tennessee jersey, a Colts jersey, Broncos, Pro Bowl jersey, whatever. But I love that. And then I also, got the pairing with the 99 PMG. Right here, which I know you and Nick have talked about quite a bit lately, and it's one thing that's interesting. Like for Peyton, it's, if you want a pro uniform PMG for Peyton, you've got to go to 99 because that's it. He's got some retro PMGs and so on and so forth, but they're all in a Tennessee jersey. And so
I'll say this so I would never discredit the Manning rookies because those are, it's hard to argue against that collection being kind of his most significant collection. However, a lot of the stuff, the price point for people coming in isn't ideal, but I think like the 99 collection of what Manning has to offer from the parallels, in Colts uniforms, like I'm very fond of a lot of the 99 stuff. So I would just say that there's really, if you don't need a rookie card, but you want some of the older stuff, like 99 is not a bad place to peruse.
Yeah, there's some great 1999 stuff, and I'll share some other things too here in just a minute.
Let me ask you, what was going on in your head when you saw the sale, which if anyone watching, one of the two PSA 10 Manning 98 PMGs sold via best offer on Fanatics Vault for $100,000, which was significantly higher than the last sale. Obviously, whenever you get a sale like that, there's a lot of conversation about it. What was going on in your head as just being an owner of the PSA 9 of that card.
Yeah, it's interesting because so I actually first got a copy of the PMG. It was in a BGS 8.5. That was the first copy that I had of the PMG. And actually the guy who I got that copy from later told me, again, about relationships, later told me that he had a PSA 9 that he would be willing to move. And I said, okay, well, could I trade you, again, the grade snob upgrade theory. I was like, could I trade you back my BGS 8.5 and some other stuff to get to value for the PMG PSA 9? And he said, sure, that's fine. Like, we can do that. And so I said, well, what do you value your PSA 9? And he goes, well, today we'll do the deal and I'll make the transaction with you for $13,000 value. And so I got that card for that. And he said, hey, just so you know, he said, I think you're getting a great deal. This guy had tons of PMGs. I forget his name. I think he's like the PMG collector or something like that on Instagram. And he still has a bunch. And he said, hey, just so you know, like, I'm not predicting future value. He said, but I think this card is at least like a $25,000 to $30,000 card, like in the not so distant future. And I'm one of those people, like I obviously know cards have worth and I don't want my cards to go down in value, but I don't project out value and say I'm buying this card because I think it's going to be worth this amount in so many years or whatever. That's not why I buy my cards. But I certainly don't want to discount that. I do know that sinking a lot of money into cards. I don't want to lose money on cards. But I thought it was crazy that he was saying that. I'm like, wow, that is just unbelievable that, it could be worth that much in a short period of time. And like, I don't know, a lot was going through my head. And then I see that sale. And then the first thing that goes through my mind is like, wow, why would somebody pay $100,000 for a card out of 50? Like, yeah, it's a PSA 10, but there's another PSA 10. There's a couple BGS 9.5s. Then people crap on the fact that he's in a Tennessee jersey. Like, I just can't believe somebody's paying that for that card. And so then I started thinking, I'm like, well, the rising tide raises all boats. And I'm like, well, I guess maybe that guy wasn't crazy about the value of the PSA 9. And like, it's coming true because I've had that PSA 9 now for about 3 years. And so it was interesting just to think that. And so as I'm processing that in my head, I get a DM from somebody that says, wow, if a Manning PMG PSA 10, a card out of 50 sells for $100K, what does that make your credentials worth now? And so,
of course, naturally.
Yeah. And so that thought had not even crossed my mind, but it is an interesting like thought experiment to think about. Is like, I feel like cards kind of operate in vacuums. And so like, you can't just say, oh, okay, well, because a card out of 50 sold, then that makes a card out of 7 worth like 4 times as much now. I don't think it works like that.
I appreciate you sharing that. All right, where are we going next?
All right, we're still in the rookies. We're going through, but this is the Rubies, obviously. One of the favorites, the senior class photo with the massive, looks like a linebacker shoulder pads, and the, his forehead wasn't as visible as much then.
Sticking on the aesthetics, would you describe the kind of the aesthetics to be similar to kind of like the hyper that we see today?
Yeah, yes, it's definitely more like the hyper. And this was a card I had in the lower grade too, and I remember talking to somebody about it, and they said like, yeah, this is a great Peyton Manning card, but it's not my favorite, that sort of thing. And for whatever reason, it always just stuck out to me that I really liked the design and I liked the serious eyes and that whole sort of thing in it. And so it was one that I just always wanted. And so I went after, and I think it's kind of proven to be true that people, a lot of people say like, hey, my favorite 90s parallels are PMGs, credentials, and rubies. And so I think that's kind of proven to be true a little bit. And then this is kind of its brother, I guess, the Shining Star Rubies. Again, this has the action shot in the Colts jersey. It has the little star, the twinkling stars in it, if you will. And so this was a recent upgrade. I know you know very well about it. I had a BGS 9, and because I'm a grade snob and I'm OCD about grades matching, because I had the PSA 9 of the 98 Rubies, I wanted the PSA 9 and the 1999 Rubies to match it.
Yeah, the think everybody on these, if you are into the ultra modern shiny stuff, it's the same aesthetics as the black star out of Prizm, which also in 2017 was bronze stars, but it's that almost identical look and feel.
Yep, for sure. And it's also interesting too. I was looking as I was showing this, the rookie Rubies is out of 35, and then the second year is out of 30. So the 1999 has 5 fewer copies than the 98. So this one, I pulled this out. This isn't one that you see like a ton of, especially in the PSA 10. But I know like Intimidation Nation is one that's really good set in basketball quite a bit. And so I've had this, again, old slab. I've had this for quite a while. But I wanted to share this one because I love what it says on the back. It says, "Yo, PM, there was this other cat that reminds me of you. Blonde hair, good looking, smiled a lot. Always had a plain expression. Never talked too much trash. On Sundays, he was a beast, though. Liked the dirt. Stayed in it, it seemed. Sort of like you. Name was Montana. Maybe you heard of him." And so I just love kind of the way that they talk about that. And obviously he was a rookie and he was highly touted and all that, but nobody knew what he was going to do. So anyways, I thought that was interesting. And it goes to show that the backs of cards matter too. This is another rookie that I've been looking for a while. Again, it's out of 50. Doesn't pop up very often. This is the Leaf Rookies and Stars Longevity. This is number 43 out of 50 PSA 10. I think this is like a pop 3 or something, but I love how it has the Colts, the horseshoes in it, and it's got good shine. And then finally, we'll end on rookie with a college one. This is the Super Rave. And so the 98 SkyBox Thunder Super Rave, obviously this is number 25 out of 25. It kind of has the gold foil, which is different, a little bit different than the regular Rave out of 150. And I'll say with the rookies and things like that, and I've shared this before, but a lot of what I did is I went in and I looked at, what was popular in basketball. And I thought, okay, well, people like Super Raves in basketball. Does Peyton have a Super Rave in football? Yep. And so then I couldn't find it. So then I just get real frustrated because I couldn't find it, but I just kept searching and searching and searching. And then I finally found that one. So.
All right, we are back.
All right. So the next stuff I want to talk about is people know about the Sign of the Times set, SP Authentic. I remember going after these as a kid. And so I had actually collected the full run of just the base version Sign of the Times. And I was like, well, it'd be fun to go after the golds. And so my favorite were 2000 to 2003. And so this is the 2000 PSA 9. This was numbered out of 18. So I think these were numbered to the player's jersey number in that year. And then here's my 2001, also in a PSA 9. This is number 18 out of 25 in the gold. And then 2002, these are also out of 25. This is number 4 out of 25. And then finally, 2003, this is number 1 out of 25. It's PSA 9.
There's so many Manning autographs. Is your desire to focus in on Sign of the Times and collect the run just based on the nostalgia of you going after it or at an earlier stage in life, or something else?
Yeah, it's more around that. I mean, I like the Sign of the Times set. Well, like you said, that Peyton signs a ton. And so I just thought, I went through the whole run of the Sign of the Times and I was like, well, these really aren't that rare. And I had PSA 10s and I thought, well, it'd be kind of neat to try to find the golds because in the case of the 2000, they're, out of 18 and then out of 25 and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, SP Authentic was like the football product that we all loved as kids. And so that kind of went the desire for that. All right. So moving on a little bit, this is the 99 Stadium Club Chrome, the first day issue. This is out of 25. This is number 17 out of 25 and a 9.5 True Gem Plus. Like a lot of people mentioned, the photography in Stadium Club is just great. And so, again, you talk about second-year Mannings that don't really break the bank, but I love, he's going up against the 49ers. You can see all the crowd in the background. And so I love the photography of this card. And this isn't one that you see a ton out there of. This is the Collector's Edge Masters, the Leatherbacks card. And so you look at the front and you're like, well, this is just whatever card. But when you look at the back, it's got a huge piece of game-used football that covers the back of the card. And I think that's really neat. I mean, you're not finding game-used football cards. You may not find something that's like a piece of a football or something like that, but this is like the whole freaking middle of the football.
It doesn't tell you what game it's from, does it?
No, it doesn't. But there's only 12 that are made. Like I don't know if you can see that. It says like 1 of 12 right there. And so there's only 12 that are made, and most of the other ones I've seen just have like pieces of the football or something like that. But this one almost has like Wilson completely spelled out into it, and you could see the whole that. So
I don't know if I've ever seen that one before.
But being that it's 2000, right, it probably came from the first couple years. So I think that's kind of cool. This one's always real popular, right? The 2002 Finest XFractor, number 11 out of 20. You don't need to spend too much time on this. I think you've already spent a ton of time on it. Everybody knows
too much.
But yeah.
What? Maybe like these things. I don't want to like spend. We've talked about them enough, but like it just feels like when people get exposed to these cards, they fall in love, and it just over like the period of time, it just like the last few years, it just seems like more and more people being exposed to it, more and more people falling in love, more and more people are interested in it. Which there hasn't been too many other categories of like cards that Manning's in that I've seen be elevated so quickly. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around it, but it just seems like it's become a highly desirable parallel for Manning and other players.
Yeah, well, I think, it's the XFractor, right? Sometimes gets a bad name because it's, in some cases, it's numbered higher. Some people don't like the XFractor look versus the refractor because it is kind of, there's a lot going on. But I think just, it's out of 20. It's the first year really of the Finest XFractor. The shine on it is just phenomenal. I think just the design of the card is great, and football people love Finest. So I think it's just a great mix of all that stuff together. All right, the 03 Chrome Gold XFractor. Again, it's a popular one. Again, great upgrade for me. I had a PSA 9. I saw a PSA 10 become available and grabbed it. It's a pop 1. These cards don't grade very well. They're out of 101, but you try to find one, they're not readily available. So it's kind of one of those cards that's 20 plus years old that you can't pop onto eBay and find a nice copy for your collection.
That's one of those cards that over the years and consolidation efforts, even though there's 100 copies, I can't let that one go out of my collection just because I'm like, print run aside, which 100 isn't a ton, but I'm like, this thing is beautiful. It's like one of my favorite looking Manning cards.
Absolutely. So this one I actually haven't shared publicly yet, but this was a national pickup. This is the 2004 Ultimate Collection game jersey patch auto signed gold. And so this is number 8 out of 10. It's a PSA 8 pop 1. It's actually the only one that's graded. And I had a previous copy of this. It was out of 25. He signed Peyton Manning, but he didn't include his number on it. And then the patch window was just a napkin patch. And so I didn't really love it. And so it's one that I moved in a consolidation thing. But I actually knew who had this card. And it was kind of one of those things where I'd reached out to him before National. And I said, hey, are you bringing this to National? And he said, nope, not going to bring it. And then sure enough, I get a text message at National. And he's like, hey, you want to meet up? I might have something you want. And I'm like, you betcha. So anyways, I'm glad to have that one. Like I know that you're not really a big patch auto guy, but I love the patch autos and the connection, and I especially love the Ultimate Collection type stuff. And it's interesting because Brady's in that set, but he doesn't have a gold. There's actually very few players that have a gold in that set. Most of them just have the out of 25.
Is your angle on just some of that like patch auto stuff is always trying to jockey to get the golds or whatever the lowest number parallel that you can is?
Yeah, just trying to get something that's like rare, scarce, something that's unique about it, that's different from other stuff. I've talked a lot and I've learned a lot from our good friend Joey, the E-Trader. There's cards that pop up now, and I'm like, man, that's really cool, and that's something I would have bought a long time ago. But he's kind of helped me learn, and I've tried to pass that on to other people, like. Especially when it comes to patch cards, like what's special about the patch? Or is it just another auto or just another patch or just another patch auto? And so I try to find stuff that's unique, whether it's a shield or a brand logo or a piece of the name or, like that type of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I look for, so that maybe it's from Exquisite or maybe it's from Ultimate Collection. And those are higher end sets. But at the end of the day, it's just another patch auto.
Maybe a second on Upper Deck. I know you've got a ton of Manning Upper Deck cards. When we close our eyes and think of football cards, or at least me, I don't think of Upper Deck. I think of basketball on Upper Deck. But there's just an incredible, I mean, I'm sure there's more that you're going to get to, but just maybe talk about why you love what Upper Deck did with football cards when they had the license.
Yeah, I think with like the Ultimate Collection stuff and, and that whole sort of thing, it's that they brought some unique aesthetics to cards and different things that we hadn't seen in football cards before. And so I think while they may have had it in basketball or something like that, I think just the type of stuff that they brought to the football scene, whether it's with patches or different types of shiny cards, different types of autos, things like that. It was just a lot of unique stuff that we had never seen in football before. So actually a good segue to the next card.
I was trying to set you up, man.
Yeah, it's great. So without you even knowing, so this is Peyton Manning's. Obviously, he doesn't have a Exquisite rookie patch, but this is kind of the throwback that they did in 2009, 2010. And so I think this card's pretty cool. Obviously, he's in his Tennessee jersey in the photo. These are numbered out of 25. This is number 16 out of 25, which was a jersey number. Obviously, it's signed, but then it has a Colts game-worn patch in it. So I think that's a pretty cool set.
I did not know that was a Colts game-worn patch in there. It makes me like the card even more.
Exactly, yeah. You get the best of like both worlds. You get all the, just like I said, I'm like a huge conglomeration of stuff. So I get the Tennessee jersey and the Colts, and that sort of thing. So I'll share these two together, but this is the Mosaic refractors from 2010, 2011 Finest, if I can get them right. Obviously, these are numbered out of 10. Just as we talked about before, this was kind of like a 2-year set. Obviously, it led to a lot of the mosaic of what we've seen now, but just phenomenal looking cards.
Yeah, and just don't ever show up. It's not on those cards aren't on my list or anything.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. All right, now we can get to the good stuff. No. So I shared this not too long ago. This is the 2006 Bowman Chrome Superfractor. As I mentioned, Bowman Chrome had some earlier one-of-ones in their product, but this was the first year that they had the Superfractor in football. And this, as I mentioned before, this came out of a relationship where I had bought a card off someone else previously. Actually, the 2014 Bowman Chrome Superfractor I'd gotten from this individual, and he's like, "Hey, I've got this card. I just sent it to BGS. Do you want me to let you know when it gets back?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And so, anyways, love the 06 Bowman Chrome design.
So 05 Superfractors came out, I believe, in 05, and then Bowman 05 was the one odd year of the blue one-of-ones, and this is the 06. So this is the first year of the Superfractor and the Bowman Chrome product. Do I have that straight?
Yes. Yep,
okay.
That's correct. And I did think it's kind of cool because 2014, if I'm right, was the last year that Peyton was in Bowman Chrome. And I think maybe the last year of Bowman Chrome football. So I've kind of got, everybody gets excited about bookends. I've got the bookend Superfractors, the 06 and 14. So can't not share this one. This is the 2008 Topps Chrome Superfractor. I was honestly, I'm probably going to cross this and put this in a PSA slab. The BGS slab kind of dulls it a little bit. If you get it in the right light, it's a phenomenal looking Superfractor. But yeah, this is one of my favorites. All right. Where to next? Okay. Just 2 more stacks left. This is the 2013 Select Black, one-of-one Peyton Manning BGS 10. Obviously, this was the 2023 national deal with our friend Gunther. This was one of those cards where he dropped it on me, and I really wasn't prepared. I think I just need to learn that for nationals, somebody's going to drop a card on me that I'm not prepared for.
People need money, and you're an easy target, Drake. If they got right. Manning,
I know. So this was one that I, had to certainly make some moves for with the PC. But this is just one of those cards that you make some moves for because it's first year select. It's the black one-of-one, and oh, by the way, it's in a BGS 10 slab. So
wonderful card. It's insane that card is at 10, and it just it recently got pulled, which was a whole nother thing.
Yep.
Pulled in a break, and I thought our Manning chat was about to lose its damn mind when it happened. But yeah,
that was pretty wild. That was pretty wild. And then this is our 2014 Prizm Black Finite, which I know this is one we disagree on. I know that 2013 is your favorite. I think 2014.
I'm not ready to align, but
okay.
I'm not ready. But yes, I could. They're all. Ask me a different week. I have a different paper.
But I just love how there's just so much background where you get that black finite in it and that whole sort of thing. And, again, it's in the BGS 10 and he's got the throwing motion and it's a great shot.
I think this, out of being an owner of several different years of black finite, this is my favorite year of black finite and Prizm because of what you just described. It's like overtaking. It's incredible. And
he really pops out of the card as a player with that background.
How'd you get this card?
Yep. So again, a friend, Sean, Smoke 87 Sports Cards. He was a guy I met at the 2021 National, and we did a deal for some wrestling cards. I actually got the 2013 Select Gold BGS 9.5 that I had previously from him, and we just stayed in contact. And this ended up being a three-way deal where a guy, his IG name is called like Real TJ Force or something. And so Sean was trying to load up on a bunch of 2016 Prizm Gold Tom Brady's. He already had one or two. I don't remember. It's been a while. One or two, and he wanted another one. And so he told me, so Sean told me, he said, hey, if you can figure out a deal with Tom, the guy's name was Tom, to where I can get one of his Brady Prizm Golds, then I'll basically like trade you the Brady Prizm Gold for the Manning Black Finite. And so it was kind of a three-way deal with us talking on Instagram and, this person ships and that person ships and kind of so on and so forth. And so it was kind of a unique way to deal. But again, as we go back, it's all about having those relationships and staying in contact and, finding, if you can't buy something, because Sean said he wouldn't sell it to me. He said, it's got to be a card. I want more than that. And so in some cases, you got to go find cards that people want to be able to get the cards that you want. So
amazing.
We talked about gold vinyl before. I couldn't let this not make an appearance. This is the 2015 Prizm Gold Vinyl of Peyton. This is number 1 out of 5. So it's his first gold vinyl from his first and only playing year. So I think that's pretty significant. This also came from Paul. I think it's really cool how this is the first year of the set, the last year that Peyton played. And again, this is one, it's out of 5. It might as well be a Ghost Superfractor because this is the only copy I've ever seen.
I think about my deals and getting them privately, and Paul's always a part of the story. So shout out to Paul Wordle Combat for making your cards available sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, that's the key. is you got to catch him like when his AC has gone out, or
that's right,
card or something like that. Then he's more open. We talked about significant Peyton autos. This is where he inscribed the sheriff and notable nicknames. This is 2013 National Treasures, number 1 out of 10. Again, try to find different autos. Certainly where he inscribed the sheriff is pretty cool. And then this is the Flawless Platinum 1 of 1, the bro patch, as I affectionately like to call it, from 2014. This was one I actually got from MC Sports Cards. He posted on his story. I reached out to him and I said, I want this card. I don't care how we make it happen, but just tell me. And this was when I was kind of moving from collecting the flavor of the week to solely collecting Manning and Breeze and wrestling. And so I had just a bunch of stuff that I said, hey, just give me a number. As long as it's reasonable, we'll do it. And I just sent a huge pile of stuff to him in trade. So that worked out good. All right. And then finally, we'll end with some shields and patches. So I posted this this week. This is the 03 Mirror Black. Again, this came from the guy that I got the 06 Bowman Chrome Superfractor from. It was just like, I finally had to ask him. I finally was just like,
what else do you have?
Everything else you have, because I don't have an unlimited budget. And so I love that the patch windows cut out into the NFL shield, so you know what's supposed to go there. Obviously, the Mirror Black, you get some phenomenal shine. I love that it's an older patch and that whole sort of thing. And then this is from the captain, Kevin. 2010 Topps Triple Threads 1 of 1. Of course, you got the equipment shield, and then you also have the jersey patches on the side. So most cards you just get the shield, but this one was always unique in that you get the patches on the side as well. And then this was actually the first shield I ever got. This was at the 2021 National in Chicago. This is from National Treasures. And what's unique to this is the dealer I got it from was from Louisville, Kentucky. And I had a Michael Jordan signed card. When I got back in the hobby, I always wanted, as a kid, I wanted a Michael Jordan autograph, but they were so expensive. And so when I got back in the hobby, I wasn't past the threshold of like, oh my gosh, I'm okay with spending this amount of money on a card. And so I found a Michael Jordan autograph, and he was in like a North Carolina uniform. It was from some SP Authentic set. I think it was out at 25 or something. And so anyways, I picked that up, and when I told the guy I wanted that and what price he wanted it at, and he asked me if I had any trade, and I said, yeah, sure. And so I went through, and he saw that Michael Jordan card, and of course I wasn't married to that card, and we did the trade straight up for it. And so pumped about that. So 2 cards left. This is the Panini Unparalleled. This is actually from 2016. So this is the only Broncos shield that I have of Peyton. But I was, even though Unparalleled isn't a huge brand or something like that, I love the shine on this card. Obviously, it's got the full shield in the window there and that sort of thing. So, and we started with a banger, so we got to end with a banger, right? We can't not show this one.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, the 2008 Exquisite Collection logo signature. This card, as I mentioned before, I could blow this up into a poster in my office and hang it on the wall, and I would still be just as amazed by it. I love the way this card looks. If someone could paint something like this for me, I would, I think my wife would be okay. She loves the way this card looks. I talked a bit about the story where the card went for auction in Golden a few years ago. And, again, my threshold for spending what it wasn't where it is now. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. And so it got to a point where I was uncomfortable spending that much on it. But as soon as it sold, and I'm sure this has happened to everybody, I was like, dang it, I wish I would have done a little bit more. Right. And actually the guy who won it, he did tell me that his bid that he put in was the last bid that he was going to make on it. He would have let it go after that. And so I'm like, don't tell me that, like that. That doesn't help things out. But, it's a guy I had stayed in contact and said, if you ever let it go, let me know. And he said, we'll do. Well, when he finally decided he needed to let it go for some other stuff that he wanted to acquire, he said there have been so many people that had been reaching out, like besides me, that he was just going to send it to auction. And so sent it to auction. It went for about double what the last sale was, which I guess was unfortunate. But, it was one that I had seen in person. It was one I had missed out on before. And I just went into that auction with my mind made up that I wasn't going to lose that card. And then I posted the card, and then I actually met another Manning collector who's a guy who kind of operates below the radar. He doesn't really want me to share his name, but he has a phenomenal Peyton Manning collection. And I later learned that he was the guy who was bidding against me in the card. And so he's someone that we talk to that I talk to on a somewhat regular basis, and we'll talk Manning, and he's sharing some of his pickups and things like that. So it's fun to, expand your network, expand the community in the hobby.
Incredible collection, incredible collector. One question before I let you go. With a collection like this that is obviously personally significant to you and significant to the hobby, how do you balance the enjoyment of what you already have with the pursuit of what's out there that you don't?
Yeah, I think, one reason I was glad that Credentials Future popped up is I needed to consolidate anyways, because I found that I just had, a safe here of cards and a, Zion case here, and then the vault at the bank, and then vaults at Fanatics and Golden and eBay. I just had so many cards everywhere that it was like, I wanted to be able to enjoy the cards. And so I still honestly think I have too many cards. And so as things are continuing to pop up, I'm slowly kind of consolidating a little bit more. But it's just neat to be able to get the cards out and look at them. And in my opinion, if you look at it and you're like, wow, that's a really neat card, or I love this card, or something like that, you just put it back in the box and you move on. But if you pull a card out, and this actually happened, I'll say this morning as I was getting the cards out today, there's cards that I have in the case that I feel like every time I do a Peyton Manning showcase or talk about my cards or something like that, I kind of skip over them. And I kind of ask myself, I'm like, I like that card, but why do I keep skipping over that card? There must be some reason that I'm skipping over it. And so I think that also helps me in terms of consolidation, or if I want to sell some things or need to sell some things, that certainly helps me with being able to decide what I want to do.
That's amazing. You already know if there's ever cards you want to get rid of, you know where to go, and there's plenty of people you can check with before you go up for auction. But you already know that. You can follow him at Drake's PC on Instagram. Drake, man, always have fun catching up with you, talking cards. Looking forward to doing this again.
Thank you, Brett.